of the legislature here in California for working with us to come together this morning. You know, I believe in independent redistricting. And in fact, when the House Democrats were in the majority, we passed a bill that provided for independent redistricting in every state of the United States. That passed the House without any Republican votes, and the Republicans blocked it in the Senate. So we're not here because we dislike independent redistricting. We're here because Donald Trump and his Republican supporters are trying to rig the next election. This is not about the candidates running for Congress, and it's not really about the legislature. It's about the people of California. What the Republicans in the Congress have done is enact a bill that will strip health care from millions of people who live in California. They have stripped nutritional programs. Who thought that we would want to eliminate Meals on Wheels for hungry seniors? They've held up education funding. They've slashed science funding. They have punished California by withholding disaster assistance because we're a blue state. We cannot let the Republicans and Donald Trump continue to attack and to hurt the people of California. And so when we learned that at Trump's behest, the Republicans in Texas are trying to change seats so they won't lose the majority in the House, just 3 seats right now, because they know what they've done is unpopular, we took a look at whether we should respond. And we decided as a delegation that we could not just stand there and allow Trump to distort the next election and continue to harm the people who we represent. And so we have worked to try and identify a map that is consistent with the goals that we believe in. It honors the Voting Rights Act. It actually adheres to the criteria that the Independent Commission worked with. We divide less cities, less communities. We're more compact, but we also identify 5 seats held by Republicans that likely could be electing a Democrat if these maps were adopted. Unlike the Republicans in Texas, we're not just doing this in secret. We are revealing the proposed maps. The legislature will talk about their process, but when all is said and done, we believe in the voters and the people of this state, and we are going to put it to them to decide their own fate. Do they want to continue to be abused by the Republicans in the House of Representatives, or do they want a change of course? And so with that, I just want to say I look forward to continuing to work with our legislative leaders, but we are here today to hear from them. I'd like to introduce someone who is from California but also was elected to chair the Democratic Caucus of the United States, someone who I've worked with closely and who I admire greatly, and that is Congressman Pete Aguilar.
Thank you so much, Zoe. Thank you so much, Zoe. Zoe and I spent a lot of time together over the last month. We spent a lot of time together the last few years. She was a January 6th committee member with me, and her support for democracy is unquestioned. As the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus, I'm so pleased to be here with our state partners. Thank you to Speaker Rivas and Senate Pro Tem President Mike McGuire for your leadership in both chambers over these last few weeks. And I'm proud to be here with all of my Democratic colleagues on behalf of my Democratic colleagues here with these Democratic colleagues. We're here today because Donald Trump is orchestrating a scheme to rig congressional maps in Texas and Republican-held states throughout this country to make it harder for Democrats to win control of the House of Representatives in 2026. Donald Trump and his Republican henchmen know that the American people are fed up with their broken promises about lowering costs on day one and their failed policies that reward corporations who are making record profits at the expense of everyone else. They are so scared to face real oversight and accountability that they're rigging the system to stay in power. So we're here today to make it clear that we're not going to sit on the sidelines and we're going to play offense. California has the largest congressional delegation in the country, and with that responsibility comes the willingness and the engagement to do more and to meet this moment to stop Republicans from stealing power from the American people. We have to fight to protect our democracy, because if we don't, the harm the Trump administration is inflicting on our country is guaranteed to go on unchecked until he leaves. But unlike Texas, just like Zoe said, where politicians drew the lines and disregarded the Voting Rights Act to disenfranchise their voters, California will hold firm to our values, because here in California we honor and lift up the Voting Rights Act. And here in California, the people, not the politicians, will have the final say on this congressional map. That process starts with our incredible leaders here today in the California State Legislature. I know there isn't a legislature in the country who is more well-suited to lead this fight and to get this done than the group standing with me. I know that this is the front lines of protecting democracy, and we need to be the voice of the American people at this moment. The folks standing up here will lead this effort and take this fight to the ballot box, giving Californian voters a chance to stand up to Donald Trump's broken promises and his failed policies and his endless corruption. I know that California will lead, because California never backs down from a fight, and these legislators behind me are willing to do the hard and necessary work in order to do that. I'm so proud to turn it over now to Assemblymember Mark Berman of Menlo Park, a former Elections Committee chair. Assemblyman.
Thank you, Congressman. My name is Mark Berman. I represent the 23rd Assembly District in the California State Assembly, and I have an admission to make. I was born in Texas. I also chair the Elections Committee for 5 years in the California State Assembly, and I'm a member of the Bay Area Caucus and the Jewish Caucus, two caucuses that overwhelmingly, if not unanimously, support the legislative package that we're talking about today. I want to make one thing very clear. I'm not happy to be here. We didn't choose this fight. We don't want this fight. But with our democracy on the line, we cannot run away from this fight. And when the dust settles on Election Day, we will win this fight. I'm a new dad. I just had a son 30 days ago. And while I realize that I still have a lot to learn about parenting, I know that there will be many times throughout my son's life that I have to tell him no. When he asks for something unreasonable, I will have to say no. Because if I don't, my son will grow up to be petulant and entitled, like President Donald J. Trump, who actually said out loud that he is entitled to 5 more Republican districts in Texas. An obviously undemocratic, un-American, unpatriotic thing for a president to even think, let alone say. But rather than tell Trump no, which is the only logical response any adult should make to such an absurd claim, Republicans predictably began tripping over themselves to give Trump what he demanded. Because that is the entirety of their party platform in 2025. Give Trump what he wants. Unfortunately, it isn't just Texas Republicans who have become feckless stooges. Every member of California's Republican congressional delegation would sooner drop to their knees in front of Trump than push back against him and defend their constituents and the Constitution. Trump has targeted California time and again over the past 6 months, targeting the farm workers who power the economies in many Republican districts, targeting California's best in the world UC system that their constituents go to, targeting the healthcare systems that their constituents rely on when they get sick. And what have these Republican Congress members done? They've stood aside while Trump harms their constituents, clapping like a bunch of seals at the circus. To make matters worse, Californians already pay $83 billion more in taxes to the federal government than we receive back, while Texas, one of the biggest welfare states in the country, receives $71 billion more in federal funding than they pay. Enough is enough. California's generosity towards our Texan neighbors only goes so far. So whether you're confronting a child that just wants candy for dinner, or a president with strong authoritarian tendencies who just wants to steamroll democracy, the only responsible answer is no. It's time for Californians to fight back. Next up, I'm proud to welcome my colleague, Senator Christopher Cabaldon.
Good morning. I was elected to the nonpartisan office of mayor in my own community 12 times. I voted for the enactment of Proposition 11 in 2008 to create this commission, along with 50.8% of Californians. Redistricting has been a public issue here in California since almost the founding of our state, since our admission to the Republic. Redistricting initiatives have been one of the most common items on the ballot, rejected by the public of California over and over and over again. But in 2008, we finally won by the narrowest of margins, less than 1% of the vote. California voters said, you know what, it's not working. We need an independent process. We need principles that drive our redistricting. And it was a call heard around the country for reform. And it is why what we really need is national redistricting reform, for sure. And in fact, my local newspaper, the Sacramento Bee, in 2010, when the voters were asked to add congressional redistricting, they said, great idea, except what happens when the other states abuse California's restraint, California's nonpartisan independence, in order to rig elections? So kudos to the Sacramento Bee for its 14 years of prescience about exactly this issue. What has happened now is that we have when you are in the legislature, when you are a mayor, and you enact policies that are not popular, that kidnap people off the streets, that close rural health hospitals in districts like mine, when you steal food, when you raise tariffs and taxes on everyday expenses, that you either change your policies, you go in an election, you fight for those policies, but what we're seeing now is the other option, which is let's just rig the election. Let's change the voters. Let's make sure the voters cannot exercise their will in a democracy, and we will not allow that to stand. Now, the commission that I support and that is so important, these are the districts that the commission would have drawn if the people of California said to them, you must fight back against Texas. Forget the legislature, forget the congressional delegation. Independent commission, we need you to rescue us and draw a map that will fight against Texas. And why do we know that? Well, these districts were drawn by reviewing hours and hundreds of hours of testimony from all of the hearings, from the commission deliberations, to understand, well, where does Winters really go? What is a community of interest with Roseville or Rockland? We know it's not Death Valley, which is where it is right now in the sharing congressional district. Where should the lines be drawn based on what people in their own communities said? So we know that. We know that we're crossing fewer city and county borders than ever, that we're drawing more compact districts than ever. And so we can be confident that this map, that what is being proposed today, reflects not just the will of the electorate in their vote in 2008, but the very best of what California has to offer to draw districts that have the integrity of the vote of the people. And we're doing it with a 2/3 vote. We're doing it in the clear light of day with public testimony, without threatening legislators with jail or expulsion for not voting for the maps, as they've been doing in Texas, without sending the FBI out in order to rig an election. That's what's happening today. This is why it is so important that we enact the public's will by protecting democracy, fighting back against Texas, but with California values, with California processes that make sure that every community in California gets their voice in Congress and make sure that the rest of the country does the same. Next, I'd like to introduce my colleague from Los Angeles, Assemblymember Isaac Bryan.
Thank you all for being here. First, I want to acknowledge the courageous members of the Texas legislature who returned back to do their job today. They broke quorum for nearly a month, begging the rest of the country to see their actions and to step up. And I remember sitting in a meeting with the speaker and members from the Texas delegation where he said unequivocally, California will step up. And that is what we are doing today. And because they have that confidence in us, that is part of why they are returning back to their job, and now we've got to do ours. Similar to my colleague from Menlo Park, I was also born in Texas. I guess it is a prerequisite to chair the Assembly Elections Committee. I lived there till I was 7 years old. Much of my family still lives there. My little brother from Texas spent the week with me last week and just flew home to Dallas last night. For me, this feels personal for many reasons. One of those reasons is also because I'm vice chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. Make no mistake about it, the gerrymandering that they are doing, the cracking, the packing, the kidnapping of communities, is to dilute the representation from those communities, often black legislators, often communities of color, often communities that have not had access to power. That is not what we are doing here in California. In fact, our maps protect every black seat currently held and protect the potential and opportunity of other areas where black migration currently exists. What we're doing is not what we want to be doing. Like you'll hear from many of us, I authored legislation calling for independent redistricting commissions on cities, on counties, on school boards, on local jurisdictions, all up and down the state. Universal independent redistricting. I authored an update to the Fair Maps Act just a couple of years ago, and both of those bills, by the way, were opposed by every single Republican. Mm-hmm. Every single one of them. In fact, the Republican leader spoke against at least one of them. It's also not about cost, by the way. Let's just be clear. We'll spend umpteen $1 million on any kind of recall to spotlight a Republican radio talk show host and waste the taxpayers' dollars. But in this case, we're spending money to protect democracy. We're stepping up for the entire country. And California has that responsibility. This isn't about redistricting. This is about whether we will allow them to continue to play in our face and do nothing. When they took money from healthcare, we stepped up in the state budget. When they took money from starving children, we stepped up in the state budget. When they took people from our communities, we stepped up outside, made the line of resistance. And somebody should check right now to see if ICE is outside, because I know they love to follow these little press conferences. Mm-hmm. They got nothing better to do than photo ops, but we're not here to do a photo op. This isn't a press conference for us. This is real work. This is what we've all come back to the legislature to get done this week on behalf of Californians, on behalf of the voters on California who will have the final say, and most importantly, on behalf of the country. And I'm grateful to be here, and I'm grateful to the leaders in both chambers for convening us all and for stepping into this moment. And next, I'd like to introduce somebody who needs no introduction because she's so incredibly wonderful, and that is our pro tem-elect, Senator Monique Limon.
Buenos dias. Time and time again, the legislature has gone to the voters to make decisions that impact 40 million Californians who call the Golden State home. And this moment is no different. This is about empowering you, Californians, to have a say in the future direction of this nation. Many of our constituents have connected with all of us through calls, through meetings, asking, what are we doing to stop the cuts, to stop the madness? Well, in order to stop the cuts to the disaster aid that our state and other states need, in order to stop the cuts for higher education and research, in order to stop the cuts to our K through 12 classrooms, in order to stop the cuts to our healthcare programs, we have got to move forward this week. This redistricting plan is an opportunity for all of us to have say. It will give Californians the chance to say that we are done with mass police on our street, that we are done with the dissolution of due process, transparency, the checks and balances that have kept our democracy alive for centuries. We are done with the abandonment of American taxpayers who have lost everything to wildfire, natural disasters, and even their loved ones. Californians have been demanding that we act in the ways that we can, and so we are. We all have a role to play. California Democratic legislators are playing that role by putting forth this initiative for you, Californians, for you to decide. Colleagues across the aisle also have a role to play by putting an end to this, because they can. They can come to the table to be part of a solution by calling on the president to end this effort and stop rigging elections. This is not a political exercise. It will take all of us to come together to safeguard the pillars of this state and of our nation. I would now like to welcome the Assembly Elections Chair, Gail Pellerin.
Good morning. I think it's still morning. I'm Assemblymember Gail Pellerin, proud to represent the 28th Assembly District, which includes parts of Santa Cruz and Santa Clara counties. I am the chair of the Assembly Elections Committee, although I was not born in Texas. And I bring with me more than 27 years as Santa Cruz County's chief elections official. That experience is what I carried into these conversations. When the possibility of a special election arose, I made sure the legislation included clear, fair, and transparent electoral provisions. And let me be clear. What we are building in California is the most transparent process in the nation. For example, we've launched a public redistricting comment portal right on my committee's website so voters can speak directly to the process. Since Wednesday, it's received over 13,000 submissions. We aren't asking Californians to rubber stamp maps drawn behind closed doors. We're putting the maps front and center and giving voters the final say. This is not about cherry picking when we follow independent redistricting process. As a former elections official, I would never stand for that. It would go counter to my core values and my life's work. This is about defending democracy itself, making sure the checks and balances our kids learn in government class are alive and well after the 2026 election. Let's be honest. Donald Trump lit this fire when he pressured Texas to change the rules mid-game. California is answering that attack, not by breaking democracy, but by protecting it. The bills we are introducing today only take effect if another state rigs the rules. California believes in independent redistricting. We want every state to adopt it, and our independent Citizen Redistricting Commission retains this authority to draw maps in 2030 and beyond. Because at the end of the day, this isn't about partisanship. It's about principle. It's about trust. It's about making sure every voter knows their voice still matters in America. And with that, I'd like to turn over to my colleague in the state Senate, Sabrina Cervantes.
Good morning. Senator Sabrina Cervantes, proudly representing the 31st Senate District in the Inland Empire, also proud to chair the Senate Committee on Elections and Constitutional Amendments. Today, we have introduced legislation to call for a November 4th special election to give voters the power to fight back and protect free and fair elections. We are here today because of Donald Trump and Republicans in Congress. They know that their agenda is deeply unpopular, and they see the writing on the wall. They know that the mass deportation regime that uses secret police to kidnap people off our streets goes against every American value. They know that voters will hold them accountable for the cuts they ran through Congress that will strip health care away from millions of people. They know that giving tax cuts to billionaires while Trump imposes tariff taxes on essential goods like coffee and bananas to raise the cost of living will hurt working families. And because they know they cannot win fair elections, they are changing the rules in the middle of the game. That is why in Texas and in other red states, Republicans are preparing to redraw their congressional maps without consulting their voters, so that Republican politicians get to choose their voters instead of letting voters choose their representative. They want to silence the voices of Latino voters, Black voters, Asian voters, LGBTQ voters, and lock in Republican power. California will not stand idle by while Donald Trump dismantles democracy piece by piece. We will not let Republicans determine the outcome of future elections years in advance before a single vote is casted to prop up this authoritarian presidency. And if you doubt that Trump is trying to become a dictator, remember that he sent federal agents just last week in LA during our press conference with Governor Gavin Newsom. The truth of the matter is, if we let Donald Trump get away with rigging elections through partisan gerrymandering, we will not have free or fair elections in the United States in the future. If Donald Trump and his Republican followers pursue this partisanship power grab, California is ready to respond. California Republicans in Congress have a choice. Do the right thing and tell Donald Trump to stop his power grab so that you can keep your seat, or lose your seat in Congress and your paycheck. If Trump moves forward, California will be the firewall. We have beaten back authoritarianism before, and this time we will do it with our votes. I now have the distinct honor of calling up our Majority Leader of the Assembly, Cecilia Aguiar-Curry.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Assembly Majority Leader Cecilia Aguiar-Curry. I represent the 4th District. And I'm proud to be here, standing alongside with my legislative colleagues fighting for democracy. Let's call it what it is. The president and his minions are trying to rig the 2026 election and beyond. Trump and Republicans in Texas and D.C. can't win on policies that hurt Americans, working people. So they have to cheat. Let me repeat that. They are trying to cheat. They know they have to attack the democratic process, just like they're using the D.C. majority to attack Californians. Trump's tariffs are giving up the price of food, clothes, and school supplies for our working families. The resulting tariffs by other countries are hurting our ag, our entertainment, our wine, and our tech industries. He froze wildfire relief for Californians who are still digging themselves out of the ashes. He cut off Planned Parenthood and Medicaid cuts that close hospitals and clinics and put our seniors and our kids and the most vulnerable at risk. He pulled the funding from universities. He silenced and robbed law firms and attacked judges who don't agree with him. It's the same old playbook. Roll back progress, strip away rights, and silence voices. We saw it when Trump and the D.C. Republicans attacked women's reproductive freedom, undoing 50 years of progress for women's equality and economic fairness. And we're seeing it again with rigged maps, trying to erase communities and turn back the clock on democracy. Here in California, we are not going to play that game. Unlike Texas, we're asking voters for their approval to adopt temporary maps. No secret backroom deals. Californians get the final say. And when the census comes up, we go right back to our independent commission because that's fairness. That's democracy. So if Republicans want to end this, the ball's in their court. They should tell Trump and their colleagues in D.C. and Texas to stop trying to cheat our voters. Until then, Californians can count on us to stand up for fairness, stand up for democracy, and stand up for fair representation for all the Americans. Thank you very much, and I'd like to bring on one of my favorite senators, Mr. John Laird. Thank
you.
You're welcome.
Good morning. In 2010, I ran in a special election for the state senate in a heavily gerrymandered district. It ran from Orcutt in northern Santa Barbara County to suburban Saratoga in Santa Clara and snaked through different counties to just get certain voters. When Gail Pellerin was the county clerk, she had people come into her saying, I didn't get a sample ballot. I don't understand, because they didn't understand they were the victims of that great gerrymandering. Well, I lost by a few points. I gave them a run for their money. And then when the commission redrew the district, and I ran in a fairly district, I won by 145,000 votes. And that is a clear example of why we are committed to fair redistricting. It happened in my district. One county took one supervisorial district after the 2020 census and jammed voters of one stripe into one district to try to make the other four competitive, even though that particular group was in a minority of the county. And I authored a bill for independent redistricting for that county that every single person that's standing with me up here that was in the legislature at the time voted for, because we want that fair redistricting. And that is the statement of why we didn't want this fight. We didn't pick this fight. It was put upon us. And we are doing this in a completely different way. You will see us vote and discuss in public. You will see that, as opposed to Texas, where it was done by just elected officials, this goes to the people. You will see that there's a trigger, so that, in fact, it only really happens if the other states do this, because we don't want this. But we are not running away from it. And it needs to be clear. This isn't the state legislative districts. This is just the House districts. This isn't in perpetuity. This is just through the 2030 census, and then it goes back. So I think this is really a fair response to election rigging. It is not a fight we want, and it's a fight that any time, if the other states walk away from, California will not implement this when it goes to the voters. But we have to stand up. And everybody's been talking about their district. I had the district, and I share it with Congressmember Lofgren, that had the levee break in Pajaro. The two counties there are still owed roughly, I think, between them, $160 or $170 million from FEMA. There are people still struggling. And the whole notion that that would be threatened and that people would not get what they need for basic survival is one of the reasons we're fighting so hard, because it would be rigging an election to block assistance for those people that need it most. And that is why this election is so important. And it's my pleasure to introduce Assemblymember Juan Carrillo. Juan?
Muy buenos días a todos. Soy el asambleísta Juan Carrillo y estoy orgulloso de servir como el vicepresidente de Latino Caucus. El presidente creó esta emergencia cuando llamó a Texas para pedirle al gobernador que cambiara las reglas y distribuyera los distritos. Su objetivo es manipular las elecciones. California no va a quedarse de brazos cruzados mientras atacan nuestra democracia. En Texas, Trump y los republicanos están silenciando las voces latinas y quitándoles poder a los votantes latinos. En California, estamos fortaleciendo a nuestros votantes y asegurándonos de que la representación latina en el Congreso sea siempre sólida. La redistribución de distritos constituye un momento decisivo para la salud de nuestra democracia. Define cómo serán representadas nuestras comunidades y de qué manera se harán escuchar sus voces durante la próxima década. También abre la puerta para que más líderes latinos aspiren y lleguen a cargos políticos. Mapas juntos y equitativos crean oportunidades reales de participación política, permitiendo que nuestras instituciones reflejen de manera auténtica la diversidad del pueblo de California. Para la comunidad latina, que constituye el grupo étnico más grande de California y representa casi el 40% de la población, este proceso es especialmente trascendental. Aunque somos una parte significativa de la población, los latinos seguimos estando subrepresentados en distintos niveles de gobierno. La redistribución es la oportunidad histórica de cerrar esa brecha. No puede haber una democracia sólida en California sin una representación latina sólida. Hoy, la redistribución de distritos nos da una oportunidad histórica de garantizar justicia, equidad y representación para los próximos 10 años. Ahora deseo reconocer al presidente de la Asamblea, el honorable Robert Rivas, por su liderazgo firme y su compromiso con la justicia y la equidad para todas las comunidades de California. Speaker Rivas.
Well, everybody, as has been mentioned, it's our first day back, break, and we've got a lot of important things to do here to close out the year in the legislature. And certainly no one expected when we left here in July that we be opening our first day back talking about mid-decade redistricting. But appreciate all of my colleagues in their comments. It really is a reflection of the diversity of our legislature. As we know, this is the most diverse legislative body anywhere in the world, standing right here behind me. But as we know, from the first day of his presidency,
Donald Trump has worked to bend our nation away from democracy and toward authoritarian rule. He has gone after teachers, universities, trying to dictate and control what our students can learn. He's gone after the press, trying to control what we read and what we watch. And here in California, we have been on the front lines. We have witnessed ICE agents terrorize our communities, hiding behind masks, dragging people, our residents, into unmarked vans, tearing families apart. And let's be clear, this campaign of fear, it does not stop with undocumented immigrants. If left unchecked, it's only going to spread wider, and it's going to spread much deeper, not only here in California, but across our United States of America. 7 months into his presidency, the pattern is absolutely clear. The more power Donald Trump and Republicans seize, the more power they demand. That is why we are standing here today together. The California Assembly, California State Senate, and Congress. United as Californians, united as Democrats, but united as Americans. And together, we are united in announcing a plan to stop Donald Trump's latest attempt to rig the rules of our elections. As we have heard, as we know in Texas, Republicans following Trump's orders are pushing this mid-decade redistricting scheme that's designed to lock themselves into permanent control of Congress. As Californians, we have a message. We have had enough of this nonsense. And we're not going to allow these abuses of power to go on unchallenged any longer. And so today, we're introducing 3 measures. And let me be very clear what actions will result from these measures. First, keeping our independent Citizens Redistricting Commission. We're not getting rid of our commission. In fact, we want the entire country to adopt independent redistricting. Why? Because it is the right thing to do. These redrawn districts that we're putting before our voters are a temporary response to Trump's power grab. They are designed to even the playing field until this threat to our democracy ends. Number 2, we fought for and secured key provisions that maintain voting rights protections enacted by our redistricting commission. As a result, we're keeping cities and communities together. Communities of interest matter. They matter to everyone up on this stage. They matter to the people we represent who have entrusted us to be a voice for the communities that we have lived in, that we currently live in, and to fight for those issues most important to them. And finally, our actions will only take effect if Texas Republicans try to rig the vote. Donald Trump sparked this crisis, and we only act if Texas breaks the rules. Now, as has been mentioned by some of my colleagues, and touched on by some of my colleagues, I have heard some so-called pundits talk about the price of this election. It costs too much. What a waste of money. So let's talk just for a moment about the cost of Donald Trump. Let's consider how much he's cost all of us since he took office. $1.25 billion. That's his cuts to California's SNAP program, which feeds low-income children. Let me repeat that. $1.25 billion to cut SNAP program, which feeds our most vulnerable families and children. $900 million. That's his cuts to our disaster preparedness grants. $811 million. That's how much he's frozen in K-12 funds. A court actually ordered that these be released, but we're still waiting for the money. Those are just 3 examples. 3. I'm not even talking about the cost of food rotting in our fields because workers are afraid of Trump's ICE raids. Or the cost of 3 million Californians losing health coverage because of his Medicaid cuts. or the billion-dollar ransom that was issued to UCLA not even 2 weeks ago, or the clearly and obvious rising prices on just about everything we see every day because of Donald Trump's tariffs. Now, I've also heard some chatter about the timeline. Not enough time for us to look at these maps and et cetera, et cetera. Let's be real. Texas started the clock. Donald Trump started this nonsense. And we're moving with urgency because democracy itself is on the line. And unlike Texas, we're putting the maps in front of the people first, and we are trusting voters to have the final say. If there is a state that's going to change their maps mid-decade and voters are going to have a say in that process and are actually going to vote for maps, if there's a state out there that's doing it like California, please let me know which state that is. I'm not aware of it. Californians see what is happening. It's the same playbook we saw on January 6th. Another right-wing power grab to silence voices and cling to power at any cost. But here's the difference. California, we fight back. We're not going to stand for this any longer. We believe in accountability. We believe in elections decided by voters, not by bullies. And today I stand here not just as speaker, not just as a Californian, but as an American, first generation at that. Proud son of farm-working immigrants from Mexico. And I'm so proud to join my colleagues in saying that Donald Trump will not decide the future of our democracy, but the people will. Mm-hmm. And with that, I want to invite up my partner and my colleague in the State Senate, Pro Tem Mike McGuire.
Good afternoon. I want to take a moment to be able to say thank you so much to Speaker Rivas for his leadership, especially in this critical time. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. To the Assembly members and senators who are gathered today, we are grateful for your strong backbone to be able to stand up against this regime. To the leaders and the members of Congress who are here with us today, thank you. It's a unified front, and as I've said before, when I first took my first oath of office at the age of 19, that oath has never been more important than the votes that we're going to take this week. I firmly believe that our democracy is on life support. The 2026 midterm elections are our best chance to be able to stop the bleeding. President Trump knows that his reckless policies are going to come back to haunt him in the midterms. We see the same damn polling that he sees. And here's what we know. He has to cheat to win. Mm-hmm. We've seen this playbook before. When Donald Trump doesn't have the votes to win an election, he orders others to manufacture them. Let's all remember back to Georgia. He tried in Georgia asking leaders to find him 12,000 votes a few years back. Luckily, those Republican leaders told him to pound sand. Mm-hmm. They had a spine. Let's fast forward here to 2025. This time in Texas, Trump has called up his buddy, Governor Greg Abbott, and told him to find 5 Republican congressional seats. And being the lapdog that he is, Governor Abbott has complied with that order. Mm-hmm. Look, we all know what's happening. Despite California Republican leaders now clutching their pearls, we're here because of Donald Trump. We're here because of Republicans. Look, you just can't be concerned about saving the coasters on the coffee table when the house is burning down. Trump and Texas Republicans are responsible for all of this. We are only here because of them. And this is not a fight that the Golden State chose. This, believe me, right, Mr. Speaker, this was not on our bingo card. But it's a fight that California cannot run from. President Trump has chosen to rewrite the rules, and Texas Republican leaders are all too happy to be able to do his dirty work for him. And it is our sacred responsibility to defend the people of California and our democracy from this madness. So, If the Lone Star State, the state of Texas, moves forward, we're have to force to do the same. If Texas and other red states come to their senses and pull back, then a detente will be called. If not, mark my word, if Texas politicians impose new congressional maps to rig the midterms, California voters will have the opportunity to be able to respond. Because here in California, voters see maps. Voters decide on the maps. It's transparency. That's called democracy. So speaking of maps, I'd like to quickly talk about one more. And that's the map and the direction California is going in under President Donald Trump. Under this administration, Medicaid cuts championed by Trump and Republican leaders, 3.5 million Californians will lose their health care. And dozens of hospitals and health centers are going to close. That said, billionaires are going to get the biggest tax cut that they've received in decades. Due to President Trump's erratic economic policies, tariffs, and cuts to federal funds, tens of thousands of jobs across this great state will be lost. We're already seeing it in ports and manufacturing, agriculture, tourism, and healthcare. But here's the good news, America. We're going to get a new golden ballroom in the White House. Under Donald Trump, and this hits home, fire recovery aid is held up for political extortion. Residents are being snatched off the street, beaten down by Trump's secret police. And get ready. Get ready for your Social Security to be privatized. We've already heard Republican leaders chomping at the bit. And under the Trump roadmap, the biggest rollback in modern history to food assistance programs have been implemented on the most vulnerable families, not just in this state, but throughout the United States of America. Mostly women and children who rely on these SNAP benefits to make ends meet. But not only is it going to impact women and kids and seniors and food banks, it's going to hit mom and pop grocery stores the hardest, who are dependent on this federal program to be able to keep the doors open in rural communities that I so proudly work in and represent. I want to end it here, and then I'm going to bring the speaker back up. Look, this is Donald Trump's map of California. This is the map Texas Republicans want to enable. This is the map California Republicans willingly support through their silence, or worse, through their unquestioned loyalty. Here in California, we believe in giving voters a choice. This is about fairness. If you are sick of the corruption, sick of the criminality, sick of the crazy, sick of the cruel, and for heaven's sake, if you are sick with cancer and waiting on a cure, you're going to have a chance to make things right. That's what this election is going to be all about. And that's what this legislation is for. No more, no less. It's about fairness. All right. So as the speaker said, we have quite a bit on the docket as we move forward in the coming few weeks. Today, I know that we are all here to be able to discuss the action of the week. We're going to open it up for a few questions, and the speaker and I will be prepared to answer. Yes, please.
Hi there. Monica Madden, ABC 7 News.
Hey, Monica.
A little unclear about the trigger language. If you all could be a little more specific. I heard Speaker Rivas say that it's only if Texas enacts these maps. What about the other states, especially considering Ohio has a quirk in their state law that was forcing them to do mid-decade redistricting before all this happened?
Yeah, the trigger language is in the constitutional amendment. The trigger language talks about Texas and Florida and other states that will be moving forward with mid-decade redistricting. So that is what the two-thirds vote will be on the floor, is only if we see other states advancing redistricting, California will respond. Now, I want to be very clear about this, though. If there is a detente called, if the state of Texas says we're going to hit the pause button, so will we. The only reason we are in this mess is because of Donald Trump and Texas. Here in California, though, we're going to put the vote out here in November. Ours is temporary. The state of Texas, it's permanent. Permanent redistricting of majority-minority seats. Please, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah, no, there's not much more I can add, but certainly we know it's been, this whole mess started with the state of Texas. That's why I listed the state of Texas. We have heard other states that could possibly redraw their lines as well, but certainly our responses to what we know for certain, which is the state of Texas.
So is Ohio included in those other states in the bill?
100%. It lists that if any other state moves forward with mid-decade redistricting, the state of California will continue. Now, I'll also say about the state of Ohio has made it clear that they are wanting to be able to proceed. They're one of the few states in the United States of America that actually allow for mid-district or mid-decade redistricting. We firmly believe that they should cool it, pull back, because if they do, so will California.
Well, and if
One of the legislators just said that the commission was already working on this in the ballot. When was that? Is that something that occurs mid-decade?
Thank you so much for the question. Yeah, so the Independent Redistricting Commission every decade sets the lines and establishes the maps per law passed by California voters back in 2008. So we are about 3.5, 4 years in to the maps that they designed and that have been adopted. And under this plan is temporary. For the next 6 years, maps would be adopted, but immediately be sent back. All of the authority would go back to the Redistricting Commission for their independent action.
There's been a lot of talk today about empowering voters. I understand you feel that Donald Trump has forced their hand, but a lot of voters are going to perceive this as politicians asking them to claim and expand their power. How do you think about the life that they see elected officials creating?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think it's very excited to hit the road and to share our plan with residents and with voters when the time comes. But it's how we went about this process in a very transparent way. Look, I don't want any a politician to draw our lines, right? But the way we went about this was an all hands on deck. We consulted with experts. We worked, in a very united front with our congressional partners. The lines that are changing here impact our colleagues in Congress, our congressional members. But the way we went about it, when I talk about experts, and the question that was just asked as well, our Independent Redistricting Commission does so much work, and they collect so much testimony. We were able to use that and base our work off of the previous work that had been done. Mm-hmm. And when you recall the redistricting process that we had to undertake, that the commission had to undertake during the middle of the pandemic, it was rushed. It was, in my opinion, incomplete. It broke up a lot of our communities of interest across California. And so when you look at the work that we put into this, you have a very complete map that I will proudly stand behind. I firmly believe that this is a map that we can defend, that we can take to voters, and it will result in greater representation, greater voices of our most vulnerable residents of the state in Washington. But again, the work that we did was centered around the Voting Rights Act. I can't emphasize that enough.
I hear a lot of the conversation you guys are talking about how does in response to it. It's an important, simple message that you're trying to relay to voters, but it is a complicated issue also. And I know you're calling it the response, election response act in the legislature, but that title on the ballot, how important is that title on the ballot for voters to read going to be?
Look, I want to be crystal clear about why we are here, right now. It's because Donald Trump and Republicans want to rig the election. They want to steal the election. Donald Trump literally called up Greg Abbott in Texas and said, find me 5 congressional districts. This is not an issue that California was looking at any point this year. But we're here because we cannot stand by and watch Trump and watch Texas Republicans game the system, rig this next election. So I think it is pretty damn simple. California will move if Texas moves, if Florida moves. If they don't, we pull back. And the last thing I'll just say is this. This upcoming election is about fairness, giving voters the right to decide. In Texas, the Texas legislature and Governor Abbott are going to make that decision permanently. This is also temporary. The authority of the commission goes right back to them at the next census. So I do think it's really simple. The reason why we're here is because Donald Trump. We would not be focused on this if Donald Trump wasn't trying to rig the election. And this is only a temporary response in such a critical time. Please, we'll go to the next.
Oh, sure. This is maybe more for Assemblymember Pellerin, but you were speaking about the public comment, public input. Said there's been 13,000 comments so far. I mean, considering that the maps have been drawn and are in print and need to be voted on Thursday, how much will that public input actually have a role in what's put on the ballot?
Thank you for the question. It's absolutely a lot for us to go through, but we're going through those comments, and I always look to our comments and look at how that's impacting the people that are going to be directly influenced by this decision. So I think it has a huge impact, and the voters' voice always matters. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And also on the Senate portal, we do also have an opportunity for people to express their opinions on this very issue, on the three measures that we will be seeing. And so we want to encourage folks to do so, because that is all indispensable. We want to make sure that people have the opportunity to give us their thoughts and feedback.
And I'll just add that the ultimate public input is going to be the voters' voice here coming up in November, right? And that's what the most important part of all this is, empowering Californians to be able to have a say on the election rigging that Donald Trump is moving forward. We'll do a couple more questions.
That you're taking on by doing this, like just as a party, it seems like you're staking a lot of your credibility on this public vote, and what does it say if the voters reject it?
So.
Well, I can talk about the risk of not, of just, allowing Donald Trump and Republicans steamroll democracy. There's a lot of risk at play. I listed a number of them: impacts of clawing back vital resources and public dollars for our most vulnerable children through, our food assistance programs. I think Senator Laird highlighted very well the situation in Pajaro, a community that we share with Congresswoman Lofgren. We've seen the suffering and the toll that underinvestment in public infrastructure has taken on that community. It was hit hard by catastrophic flooding a couple years ago. And the fact that the federal administration, the Trump administration, wants to claw back those dollars is unheard of. And so there's too much at risk for us not to meet this moment. As has been mentioned by many of us here on the stage, and that's why we are united in doing something and responding forcefully back.
Republicans have said that they believe that what you're doing right now is illegal. They threaten to sue. They say that under current state law and the California Constitution, that politicians aren't supposed to draw maps. I wonder, what's your response to that? Are you concerned that this is vulnerable to a legal challenge under state law, and then also under federal law, under the federal voting law?
I got to be blunt. California Republicans are now clutching their pearls because of self-interest. Not one California Republican spoke up in the legislature and the House when Texas made the decision to be able to eliminate 5 historically black and brown congressional districts. Not one. What I would say, spend more time on the problem. The problem is Donald Trump. The problem is the state of Texas. The problem is Greg Abbott. They want to rig this election. They want to steal the election for the American people. Rather than doing publicity stunts here in the great state of California, get on the damn phone, call Donald Trump, and tell him to disarm. Mm-hmm. If he disarms, California disarms. The only reason that we are here is because of President Trump and American Republicans and their leadership. So, candidly, I think that is fake outrage and crocodile tears.
So are you saying that you're confident that this would hold up to a legal challenge if it goes back to the voters? And what's your response to the legal argument?
So under the Constitution, and I encourage Republicans not to focus on publicity, but read the Constitution. If they were to read the state constitution, the legislature has the right to place constitutional questions on the ballot. Full stop. And obviously, the people of California have a right to vote on it. And that's what we're going to do right now. We're going to put a constitutional amendment in front of the California voters. Unlike Texas, where they're going to vote in the legislature, jam it through at who knows what hour of night, and permanently rig the elections in the great state of Texas, this is a temporary move in one of the most extreme times of our democracy. Mr. Speaker?
There's not much I can add, but just emphasize, ultimately, this will be approved by voters, period.
This might be a question for one of the congressional delegates, but, you know, it seems there are more Republican states that are jumping on board with Texas of this proposed gerrymandering. Are you concerned that if, you know, let's say this all goes through, voters approve it, gerrymandering, sometimes it doesn't always work this cycle, you're not guaranteed to pick up 5 seats, same goes for Texas, but there aren't as many Democratic states that are stepping up to this. New York wouldn't be able to go into effect until 2028. So are there any other tools that you're looking at to possibly respond to this other than just what California is doing?
The tools are let the people decide. That's what the tools are. We'll let the people decide not only these maps, but our political prospects in 2026. That's all this is about. We feel that Democratic candidates will make the case that Republicans are assaulting their health care, they're disappearing people off the streets, they're taking supplemental nutrition, food off of the table for families, and we're happy to have that conversation about what we believe versus what Republicans have voted on. Now, in Indiana, the entire state legislature has been summoned to the White House tomorrow. They already have a delegation that is 7-2. And it's not enough for Donald Trump because he will do anything he can to hold power and to avoid responsibility and accountability. The folks behind us here say that's enough. The people will decide whether California should stand up and change these maps. And the people will decide who the majority should be in Congress next November. But let's not go into that with rigged elections that already decide that fate. That's all this is about.
We're hearing a lot of questions.
Last question.
Thank you. We're hearing a lot of questions about risk from the audience. Is it not safe to say that with this proposal, not only will Republicans not be rewarded for their behavior, but they will not be able to turn to blue states to yield safe red representatives?
If the voters approve this, what Texas is doing will be nullified. And that's important. We will have stopped the rigging there. We know that Trump is trying to rig other states. Without compromising any discussions, there are some other Democratic states that are looking at what their opportunities are as well. But we also know that their policies are deeply unpopular. Mm-hmm. And we are running wonderful candidates challenging those policies in seats that have not been redistricted all across the United States. That's why they're so worried. They know they're going to lose unless they rig this election, and California is not going to let them do it.
Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate you.